those applications and products that were opened up in branches weren't opened there because consumers wanted to. It was because consumers had to. It was because the digital experience was so bad, or maybe even non-existent altogether. The What's Going On survey was actually a survey of mid-sized financial institutions in the US to understand what were their priorities from both a business and technology perspective going to be in 2021. And I've done this now for about 5-6 years straight, so I've got a good year-over-year view. There are a couple of things that are clearly emerging as trends from financial services, and this is really from a banking perspective, more specifically, not so much wealth management or insurance. Number one, there is still a very, very strong focus on digital sales and digital account opening. I think last year was the straw that broke the camel's back, Vlad, in terms of getting financial services executives here in the US to really understand that the branch wasn't as important as they thought it was. Yes, they've always seen a lot of branch activity, and yes, a lot of accounts were being opened up in branches. But I think last year made them understand that those applications and products that were opened up in branches weren't opened there because consumers wanted to. It was because consumers had to. It was because the digital experience was so bad, or maybe even non-existent altogether. It forced people into the branches to do these things. And last year with the pandemic, as branches closed, and many are still actually temporarily shut down, if not permanently shut down, is still forcing consumers to use the digital channels. So digital account opening and digital sales has really emerged as a very high priority for financial institutions. A second one is really the impact of FinTech. And this, I think, is a very important evolution, Vlad. When FinTech companies, neobanks, challenger banks, started coming out around 2010, 2011, they beat their chest and go, well, we're so superior. We're going to provide a better customer experience, and it's going to be mobile, and it's going to be great, and we're going to put all these banks out of business. And of course, they didn't. What's kind of really evolved is that the FinTech players are co-opting with the traditional financial institutions. So finding ways from a bank perspective to not just integrate and not just partner with, but to really leverage what a FinTech company can bring them in terms of new products and services, in terms of new ways of doing business, new ways of providing customer value, is a very top of mind trend for a lot of the financial institutions these days, figuring out how to leverage this, not just as a defensive move to prevent being disrupted, but as an offensive move to utilize those services. And the third big trend that I'd point to is and it follows a little bit along the lines of the FinTech partnership. But if you look at the way banking has evolved over the past 10, 15, and maybe even 20 years or so, there is such a high degree of interconnectedness between banks and their providers and suppliers, between banks, of course, and their customers, but between banks and the environment. That could be governmental agencies, it could be suppliers of data, it could be technology providers. And so streamlining those points of interconnection with things like APIs and other integration capabilities has become very top of mind and a very top priority for a lot of financial institutions.
How are they going about this? And if we look at the first one, let's say the digital sales and account opening, where are they right now in terms of where do they need to be to get to that digital transformation phase where you feel like you would be in a good place? I mean, does it right now start and end with account opening, or does it go much deeper than that already?
So it's a great question, and there's no easy answer to that because a lot of banks and credit unions too, you got to throw them into the mix, are kind of all over the map with this. There are probably a lot, and I would say probably too many financial institutions that approach digital account opening as a kind of a once and done kind of a thing. And this is two aspects to this. One is they treat it as sort of, okay, there's a system and application that we need to provide. let's go out, let's go look at the vendors. Okay, we choose vendor A, we put it in, good, we're done. A couple of problems with that. Number one is that no matter what you put in on day one, it needs to evolve. As new capabilities come, as new needs emerge, banks really need to think about these systems and technologies almost as products with a product roadmap. The vendors have product roadmaps for their applications and systems, but the banks need to be thinking about this less from a technology app perspective and more from a process perspective, the process of digital account opening. And so there's not enough that really think in terms of, okay, it isn't just about opening the account, it's about onboarding. It's about the onboarding process as well. And then the smarter ones realize, well, wait, it's really not just about account opening and onboarding as well. It's about transitioning to a deeper part engagement with that consumer. That's probably going to happen more from a digital perspective than it is a branch perspective. There's only so many times a month a person is going to come into the branch to interact with you, especially for reasons other than having a problem they want resolved. So how do you drive digital engagement? And that's the bigger umbrella and challenge that the banks need to be thinking about. Is the digital account opening is not just about opening the account, it's the first step in an engagement strategy. And when you ask where are banks on this and so forth, they're all over the map. Some are seeing it too narrowly, some are doing it broader with onboarding. And I would say probably only a handful at this point, or maybe not a handful, but not enough, and probably growing though, see that you really got to think of it more broadly in terms of how it fits in an overall digital engagement strategy.